Okay, I would say we get started then.
Super.
Yes? Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody to this third event of our UXify event series, UX Meets Diversity. First thing first, a few words about UXify. UXify is a 1,000 members plus community of creatives and professionals and students that connect through our platform, which is an event organization platform, to learn more about the design, to learn more about UX, and of course to connect with each other and harvest our interest in this fascinating field. Since a few months, we started to organize ourselves in themes. So we organize blocks of events, three events in one block. We started with the education during the spring months. And now we're concluding our second event series, which is UX Meets Diversity, as I mentioned before, with our guest, Eva. And from next month, we're going to start a new event series with sustainability, UX Meets Sustainability. So stay tuned if you want to learn more about this fascinating combination. And I would like to introduce our guest, Eva de Bruijn. I would like to, she's a social designer, and she is here today to tell us about Studio Connected Cultures, which is a toolkit that enables people to indeed connect and find things in common across different cultures. But I will give the floor to her to tell us more about the toolkit. And towards the end of the session, we'll also have a short workshop where she will make us experience a little bit hands-on what it feels like to use her toolkit and what it means or what it could mean for you as a designer or for you as an organization. So thank you. And Eva, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chiara, for inviting me and also for the introduction. And good evening, everybody. My name is Eva de Bruijn, like Chiara said, and I'm a social designer. And before I start my presentation, please feel free also during the presentation to ask questions. The only thing is that because I'm sharing my screen, that I don't see you. So if you are looking confused and I cannot see it, so please make a kind of noise or something, and then I will have a break and let you ask a question or have a comment. I will explain indeed about the methodology and workshop I developed regarding Studio Connected Cultures. Also, we are now experimenting with a Corona-proof version, so a hybrid version or a digital version. It's just really in the beginning of that, actually. And I also hope that maybe you have ideas to improve the things we already developed. So we are also really open to get inspired by your knowledge and experience and ideas. So I will share my screen by now. Let's see if that goes smoothly. Do you all see my screen? I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, yes. Great. Who am I? I'm Eva de Bruijn. Like I said, I'm a co-founder of Studio Connected Cultures. Actually, I developed it together with Laura Peters. And we both studied at the Eindhoven University of Technology. We both did the Bachelor and Masters of Industrial Design over there. And I took them more the social track. So I developed myself towards a social designer, meaning that I try to solve societal problems, but not on my own in my office, but with all the people and parties that are involved in a problem. I'm currently working also at the design studio. We are Social Rebels. We are based in Eindhoven, and we tackle actually all kinds of societal challenges, from international, like the challenges that internationals face, but also youngsters or people in mental health care. What I said, not in our own office, but with all the people and parties that are involved. And besides that, I'm also in part of the city council in Eindhoven, so the local politics, in which I try to also improve our democracy and make sure that all newcomers feel welcome here in our city, here in Eindhoven. I see that it's a bit pixel. As a designer, that is a really bad thing, of course, the picture. But yeah, in 2015, there was a crisis in Syria, amongst others, and lots of people came to Europe. So also in the Netherlands, we welcomed a lot of lots of refugees, and what we saw was like actually we wanted that all citizens feel welcome in the Netherlands and welcome in our city. But we saw that people struggled a bit to find connections with the locals or with the natives. So there are lots of activities where events were arranged for refugees, for example, soccer games or having dinner together. But actually, that connection and having a stronger relationship, that was a bit more difficult. So that's why I did my graduation project about the question like, okay, how can we help people from various cultures to build up a strong connection? And yeah, what I already said, not in my own student room. I actually started a co-creation process together with people from Syria and people born in the Netherlands, actually with the question like, okay, what do you need to build up a strong connection with each other? And actually, after several co-creation sessions, we came to the conclusion that it was about, in the beginning, you are actually in a kind of honeymoon phase. You see someone from another culture, but if you get to know someone a little bit more, then and maybe that's also in your relationship or in your marriage, then you also see a bit that the other maybe views the world in a different way than you do and has different habits, and actually you encounter certain cultural differences. So together we said, okay, actually the goal of a toolbox that helps people to build up a sustainable connection is to create a safe environment in which people can actually open up about cultural differences and similarities and have a conversation about, okay, where do these come from and how can we actually create an environment in which we can broaden our horizon and learn from each other. So that's actually what we did. And after this co-creation session, I developed the first prototype actually of a toolkit and just let people try. So I invited people from Syria, people from the Netherlands, and I had all kinds of, during that time, kind of random tools to see like, okay, what works and what doesn't work. And one of the most important parts was actually the tangibility of the tool, because you have actually a different way of talking with each other and having a different way of having a conversation with each other and discover these cultural differences and similarities. I will show this somewhat later. So actually, we developed a methodology that guides people actually to the process of getting to know each other and to get to know each other's culture. And this acculturation curve, it's made by or developed by Geert Hofstede. He's a scientist who did a lot of work on cultures. He has been criticized about a lot of things, but I think this curve was a good starting point actually to develop our methodology. And actually what we did over here was but there's first actually a threshold. So we noticed that people had experienced a kind of threshold to get to know the other, because they they didn't know what to expect and what who the other would be. But once people overcame that threshold, then they were actually in a honeymoon phase. Like imagine you are being in another country and you're like, oh, I like the food, I like the people. I would love to move to this country and live there forever. Actually, so actually, more the honeymoon phase. But once you get to know each other more, or once you decide to actually stay in a certain country, then you also can experience a kind of culture shock. And our methodology does not aim to escape that culture shock. We think as part of the learning process, just like in a relationship, you also want to know what maybe the bad habits are of your partner. But with our methodology, we actually help people to go through this curve and actually come into a phase in which they understand each other and see the differences as a kind of value, as a kind of positive element of their relationship. So during the workshop, we try to guide people to 4 steps. In the first step, they have certain tools to get to know each other. In the second step, they will explore each other's culture. In the third step, they will exchange perspectives and discover the way other people look to the world and what their opinions, perspectives, habits, and so on are. And the last step is actually the point where people reflect on the things they learned and celebrate diversity. So in this process, we developed both a tangible toolkit, but also a workshop to guide people through this process. By means of the tools in the toolkit. I will dive in a little bit in the steps to explain a bit more how they have been developed. And maybe it's good to know that I will show you this slide, that we did our workshop in several contexts. So with refugees, but also with international students, with expats, with groups of hundreds of people, and with really small groups. We did a pop-up workshop. We were on a fair. We did digital workshops. So actually, the methodology is for us. It's the base, and by doing these workshops and iterating on it, we also actually validated that this method works to get to know each other and to open up about cultural differences and similarities. And since then, we just actually tried and experimented with lots of contexts and lots of different kinds of people. And also we learned a lot during that process. For example, first we focused on refugees, and then the toolkit was really developed around different nationalities. So what's the country you're from? But when we met people who, for example, were bicultural or were expats and moved all over the world, or didn't have one country to relate to, we also discovered that culture is, of course, way more than that. So we also developed our methodology in that sense further. I don't see the participants of this presentation, so if you have questions, I will pause a bit. Otherwise, I will go further. Okay, I will go further. Well, in the first step, we help people to get to know each other and to break the ice. So we make participants aware of each other's humanity and taking away the unknown. And humanity, it sounds really heavy, but in the context of refugees, you saw in the news that people were actually afraid of them, while when they once talked with each other, it was like, oh, you also have a family, you also have dreams, you're just a person. So that's what we mean with like making aware of each other's humanity. And in the first step, we have several questions and exercises that provoke personal stories and make people aware of each other's humanity, what I said, but also, the people actually open up by themselves, which you will need during the rest of the workshop. And actually, this part can already take, if you want, 3 hours, because you see that people just start talking to each other and have a lot to say. So it's always a really nice energy in the room to see this. The second step is to explore each other's cultures. This is a bit the honeymoon phase, so it's not really that you are going deep in this exercise. But yeah, you actually introduce each other to each other's cultures. So we have several questions, but also exercises that support the participants to discover the different elements of each other's cultures. Think, for example, about drawing exercises, showing pictures on your phone, or having several questions that about, for example, what's the thing you're the most proud of your culture, or what is the weirdest tradition your culture has? That kind of questions to actually get to know each other a little bit more in the cultural way. And the third step, and that's also the step we will experience together, is about exchange perspectives. And the goal of this step is to discover, understand, and accept cultural differences and similarities. So we have several association games in which the participants have to explain, express, or guess their associations with a certain word or symbol. I can show you the toolkit in a minute, but we have certain tokens with symbols, and then we ask, for example, what does friendship mean to you? Explain it by using the tokens with the symbols, or explain it by making a drawing and afterwards compare the drawings to each other. And by these actually playful exercises, it allows you actually to open up about kind of difficult topics actually that are sometimes a bit awkward or difficult to talk about. And you see that it helps people to explain the behavior of the other, to explain the other habits or the view on the world, and also reflect on their own classes or their own backgrounds and how that influenced their lives and their choices. We developed actually lots of different exercises in this step. And the last part is celebrate diversity. So after you get to know each other, after you get to know more about each other's cultures, and after you open up about yourself and discover these similarities and differences, we stimulate people to reflect on the workshops that they had, the contact they had with the others, but also reflect on, okay, what can diversity mean in my work or mean in my life? And in that sense, we actually wrap up the workshop and make sure that people also go home with the insights they gained. And during Corona, we actually also developed a hybrid version of our toolkit. So we people got in their mailbox, in their physical mailbox, a tangible toolkit, just a paper prototype actually, and afterwards they had a digital workshop. And we also hosted a fully digital workshop, combined with a digital environment in which like hundreds of master students of Eindhoven University of Technology actually got to know their new fellow students. And well, you can imagine that this is, of course, a different interaction than the tangible physical workshop we were used to do. I will now stop my presentation for a while. Delen stoppen. Let's see. I hope, first of all, well, it's time to experience part of the workshop, but first of all, were there maybe questions about this part? And I have to say, first I was used to talking English like every day, but it has been a while. So excuse me for my for my English.
Nothing to be sorry about. It was great. Yes, there are questions.
I have a question. What is when do you think, so I think this project started as a research project for university, if I'm correct. And then you tried it out as testing part, but where do you see, oh, do you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
You hear me, right? Okay. So then I lost my point now, but I think my question was that where do you think this could be applicable in practice, in real life, in companies or in like associations, or which kind of associations would be interested in this toolkit?
Well, it's a good question. Actually, it started as a design project, and I now mostly explained the process of developing. But I forgot to mention that it is already a finished product, which will still be in development. But we are actually already implementing it in real life. So to say. So we hosted several workshops for the Eindhoven University of Technology for the new international students. But we also are in contact with, for example, expert organizations. And actually our ideal scenario would be that on the one hand, we give workshops to big companies which has a lot of different nationalities. And on the other hand, we can provide a workshop for a really small price to, for example, voluntarily organizations that help refugees in the city. So actually, on the one hand, we want to have a kind of commercial side, for example, for what I said, international employees, for companies which have money to purchase such a workshop. On the other hand, we just want to also have social impact, and we actually discovering if that business model will work out.
Okay, can I ask?
Okay.
No, you go first.
No, you can continue.
So maybe this other one is, did it happen maybe that you have different cultures that maybe do not really merge nicely? So there are some nationalities, let's say, that are typically against each other, and then it can happen that during the conversation you have differences, and then maybe you discover that you do not agree and you don't want to go on with the conversation, or you don't want to merge. And that's a possibility, and that's obviously a choice that people can take. I think it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But did it happen, and what happened in that case?
So a really good question as well. I think our goal is not that cultures merge with each other, but understand each other's different perspectives. So if someone has a different view or opinion than you, that you create an environment in which you can talk about these differences and try to understand where the other comes from. But that does not mean that you, in the end, maybe agree with each other. But by this understanding, we hope that people create a safer and more welcoming environment. And sometimes it also helps to actually solve biases. For example, we had a conversation with some boys from Syria and some Dutch girls. And on one hand, we had like we have these tokens. I can show you. Sorry for the sound. It's like a bit in I don't know if you can see it, but they grabbed a token with a woman and with a man, and they ask actually, do you think that men and women are equal? Which is a really sensitive topic. And people also had a bias, like, oh, people from Syria maybe think that men are above women. And then the boys from Syria had like a really, I say that, easy way, because they could just use the tokens to explain, like, okay, people from our age actually think that men and women are equal, but like our parents or grandparents, they are more like old-fashioned and they have other views. And it was a really sensitive topic, but the tools actually allowed them to have a bit more, a bit less awkward, but a bit more open conversation about that.
Thank you.
Yes. Sarah, did you also have a question?
Yes, I have 2 questions. But first of all, thank you for a really nice presentation. I really like the idea of bringing this, like this conversation is often kind of random, and you don't just go and ask this to, like, anybody you just met. So I think having such a tool kind of create a little bit sort of like a gamification of the like, you are in a safe, like in a special space where you are allowed to kind of test the boundaries, like ask things that you wouldn't normally ask in a coffee shop, just because you just met a person from another country, and then you suddenly ask this, and people are going to be like, what's wrong with you? But yeah, I think it's really cool, and I'm very interested to kind of learn a little bit more about like the business model behind your idea. And the second question is, I wanted to know about the period of how long does the toolkit take from step 1 to step, like, is it is it very different from each other, or you have some sort of boundaries or checklists that you make sure that, okay, now we can go to step 2 or step and following steps. And by the end of this, for the fourth step, how do you measure, or do you measure at all the successful criteria of the workshops, for example? Like, how do you say, like, okay, we have a really good, like, interesting outcome, or is there such a thing to begin with? So that's my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul, for your questions. To start with the second, actually, we have 2 ways of providing this workshop. On the one hand, or the first way is actually a workshop of just a few hours. And the goal is actually just to get to know each other, to get to know each other's cultures, and have actually the first conversations about these cultural differences and similarities. Mm-hmm. So these workshops can take like 2-3 hours, just half a day actually. And the other way we provide it is actually by having several shorter workshops. So, for example, during the lunch break of your company, in which in each session you will do one step. So in the first session you get to know each other, in the second session you get to know each other's cultures, and so on, in order to actually stimulate learning in between the sessions. And then we facilitate also that people actually go somewhat deeper, because they have like a more extensive learning curve. And we also, at the end of the workshop, we stimulate people to reflect on it. And we also provide tools for that. So they get a booklet, which they can bring home. But we also offer the opportunity to make a poster with the biggest insights of the workshop, in which, for example, organizations can hang up in their canteen and so on. So that also will be somewhat more sustainable. And about the impact, that's really interesting. We actually didn't measure the impact by quantity. It would be really interesting. We of course evaluate from time to time like how people experienced the workshop, and we improved the workshops based on that. But it would be really interesting to, for example, have a call a week or a month after, like, okay, and did you change your behavior, or which insights do you still remember? We didn't do that yet, but it's really interesting. And the first question was about the business model. Yes. Yes. Well, we see that there are, like, from several kinds of organizations, there's interest in the workshop. Yeah. We are now providing the workshop on small scale. So besides Studio Connected Cultures, I'm also like a social designer. And work at a company, so it's not my full-time job, so it's now a bit on a small scale, so we cannot really validate the business model yet, but we are just experimenting with it. So on the one hand, we provide workshops to customers who pay for it, and on the other hand, we just have a a kind of symbolic a small prize for the social customers.
Okay.
I think there is another question.
Yes.
If there is time for it.
Yeah, I also have a question. Possible.
Yeah.
And afterwards,
Yeah,
we
go for
also, we can also skip the interactive part of the workshop. Kia, till which time or like till when do we have?
So you finished your presentation a bit earlier, so
great.
we can have this time for questions. And the workshop is supposed to start in a couple of minutes.
Great.
But there's still also Q&A after the workshop. So I think maybe we can have one more question, then go into the workshop, and then if there are more questions, there is also still time at the end.
Great.
Okay. Could I maybe ask my question, or do you want to ask your?
No, you go first.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, just thank you for the presentation. I think it's really interesting. So I noticed, like in the beginning, you mentioned that one of your research questions was to investigate how to develop, let's say, stronger relationships with people from different cultures, essentially. So I was wondering if you got feedback from this, let's say, from the users, in the sense that did they feel that they actually developed like more meaningful relationships, or did they also, for example, want to meet the other people in like in the workshop later on, for example? Do you know like anything like that, Sarah?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, you have on the one hand, you have like just one meeting. For example, you go to a dinner with refugees, for example, or just one event. On the other hand, you have like those strong, sustainable friendships for your whole life. Yeah. And well, of course, we don't reach like the last thing fully, but I think with the workshop, we reached the first step towards a more sustainable connection. And in the beginning, especially during my graduation projects, I also had some long-term user tests in which people met like a few times, and there we evaluated actually on also the relationships they developed. Okay. And actually they were more deep and more I say that less on the surface, so to say.
Meaningful, yeah.
Yeah, more meaningful indeed. But I have to say, like afterwards, we did a lot of workshops, but we don't call the participants like about the impact it had. We sometimes hear from people like, oh, I had, for example, a meeting with one of the participants was one of my colleagues, and I thought I knew her already, but because of the workshop, we got to know each other on a whole different level. So that kind of feedback we receive sometimes. But it's interesting to dive more into the impact, like how to measure that indeed.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful. I would suggest then we move to the workshop. I have shared in the chat a link to a mural. Can you please click on it and let me know if it works for you? I see people popping in. So when we're ready, I'm going to screen share so that the people who are following us on live stream can see what we're doing. Yes.
Okay. Normally the workshop takes a few hours, and now we have 5 minutes. So I made a really simple version, actually. And we also just step into step 3, like exchanging perspectives or exchange your glasses. So just to get a kind of sense of what what the workshop means. And actually, what I said, like by having these small games, we invite people to discover their cultural differences and similarities and to open up about these. And normally we have those physical tokens with symbols like what you see on the screen. And people can, touch it and shift them around a bit and so on. but this is actually the simple digital version of it. And the exercise I would like to give to you is to think about what does success mean to you, and choose 3 symbols which symbolize success for you. And you can do that by writing your name on the symbols. So you have a kind of text icon, and then you can write it. So let's see. Now I think see my name on one of the symbols, on the symbols with the people. And well, I would like to invite you to also write your name to 3 of these symbols. So just 1 minute, and then I will ask some of you like why you choose the 3 symbols you chose.
I am receiving feedback that the mural is not visible because I'm live streaming. So perhaps Eva or Berkay, could you try please to share your screen so that the people on YouTube can see what we're doing?
Should I go for it, or are you?
Oh yeah, if you can do it, then
yeah, I'll do it.
Great. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then I'm gonna stop my.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, it works very well. Thank you.
Perfect. I was doing my last icon.
Okay.
So Eva, could you please, for the people on YouTube, recap a little bit what we've been busy with?
Yes. So this is one of the exercises of step 3, in which we invite people to explain what success means to you by picking 3 symbols that they think represent success for them. And by doing so, you actually see where the similarities are. So what you now see is, for example, some people chose the heart, some people chose the people, or the symbol of the people. But you also see like symbols that just are chosen by just one person. So it's a really visible and tangible way to actually see in one eyesight, actually, like, oh, okay, here are the similarities and here are the differences. And of course, this is not enough normally, and I will invite 2 people to explain it a bit. But normally we ask people, okay, why did you choose these 3 symbols, and who or what in your culture has actually influenced your interpretation of success, and can you explain it a bit? And after that everyone has explained their definition of success and why they chose the symbols, you will reflect with each other, like, okay, what are the reasons that we maybe have different views on it? Is it because of our nationality or the way we are raised by our parents, or maybe you are raised in a city or in a town? There are a lot of factors, of course, which can influence the way you look to the world. So we invite people afterwards to reflect on these, and normally we also have reflection cards for that to stimulate this conversation. Natasha, I hope I pronounced your name right. Could you maybe, if you want to explain why you chose these symbols, and maybe also explain which symbols you chose? Maybe not everyone sees them.
Okay, so I'm here. There's three. One, okay, the raising arrow, the light bulb, and the interconnection. I think this is. So I chose this three because, well, I'll start with the easiest one. The first one I chose, the light bulb, because it's a good idea. It's the symbol of a good idea, and also I think one of the biggest inventions that I know of from my culture. So my parents are from Serbia, and Nikola Tesla was contributed, at least we can say that, in for the advancements in energy. So this is the one symbol that comes from my cultural background a little bit, and also because a good idea, being a product designer, and that this idea expresses into a product as well, is something that is evident success for me. Raising bars, I think I like the fact that it doesn't say what it's raising. So success means something that helps something else grow. So this could be money, this could be wellness, it could be like education or other values as well. So this was good enough for me as a symbol of it. And then connection or connectivity is helping different communities. So I think success for me is not only something that tackles something for one person, but has a bigger social impact as well. So that's why I chose this one.
Oh, really nice. And you said like, oh, maybe this stands for this, or maybe this stands for that. Sometimes during workshops, we get a question like, oh, what does this symbol mean actually? But also that is open to for interpretation, so that you associate the light bulb actually with the actual light bulb and Nikola Tesla, instead of like having ideas in general. That's also already a nice story to share with each other. And for example, in the right in the corner, you see like maybe a lock. I meant it as a lock, like safety or security. But then in the workshop, people saw some girls saw it as a handbag, and had a story about that. And like each and also the growth. Some people see it as profit, but what you said as an explanation, it's way broader than that actually. And normally I would now ask like the other participants, oh, do you maybe agree with this explanation, and what did you have, and would you like to shift maybe your name to another symbol, and so on, and have a really reflective conversation. I really would like to have that by now as well, but I think that there's no time for that because we have just 6 minutes left. But thank you for the explanation. Let's see, Chiara, is it an idea to go to the Q&A, or
I think we could use this last few minutes if somebody else wants to share why they put their name on the tiles.
Good idea. So does someone wants to share their choice, and maybe also reflect on what you heard from the previous explanation of Natasha?
Shall I share mine then?
Yes.
Okay, I pick So the first one is something like vegetables or plants, because I think like I relate that to green. Like for me, like to be able to live close to green area, having like enough greeneries around me is something that I find like that's part of a successful thing to have, I think. And apart from that, I look at the dove or the birds as a symbol for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to do what you want within your own terms, it's a luxury, but also it's something that I appreciate, and I wish I appreciate to have and to continue having that for a long time. Like
And
the
is
freedom to do what you want.
and is it why do you see this freedom as a luxury?
Because I think not every like you I come from Malaysia, so before this like you don't necessarily can do what you wanted to do, because it's like you are either being like you have financial issues, or you have families issues, or you come from a culture where things are you can't do what you want easily. So for example, it's not easy to be if you are gay, or if you come from a certain group with a different way of thinking or doing things. So you are not necessarily allowed to do something like, for example, in Malaysia, like gay or like lesbianism is not allowed, for example. So it's and I have friends who are struggling to face this kind of issue as well. And I realized that the freedom is a luxury, but we don't realize it unless you lost it or unless you don't have it. So yeah, I think for me, like the dove have given example of freedom, and to be able to do like to allow not just me but also people around me to have such a freedom
Yeah.
is something that I'm yeah, for me that would be something successfully would be my sign of success. And
But
the last, sorry.
oh, sorry, if I can interrupt a bit. What I find interesting is that you, maybe because you saw what it is to don't have freedom, that you chose this symbol, but the others, I think everyone finds freedom important, but nobody else chose it, maybe because it's so normal for us. It's an assumption I have, but I find it really interesting.
Yeah,
sorry, I want to share that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like it's something that it's something that when when I don't have it, then I realize how much it meant. And but it's very difficult to kind of express it when you have everything, I think. So it's something that I think culturally where I come from, for example, in Malaysia we also have a certain discrimination between men and women. So it's really like it's like, for me it's stupid, but that's the reality. That I have a child, my as a woman, my daughter can't have a citizenship of Malaysian citizenship. But if I'm a man, then she would be able to get a Malaysian citizenship. So it's kind of like such a clear discrimination, and I never felt so lost, or like I never felt like being discriminated upon. Like I don't have this capability to do things that I want because it's just legally or you're just not allowed to by law. So it's frustrating sometimes, but
I can imagine.
But then it is also something you learn to appreciate of the things that you have. So yeah, and the third point is I choose people, because I really think like having not just like having a good life, having a really a happy and how to say comfortable way of living, and also working with people. So for me, people, family, communities are very important to kind of share not just like your own way, like to be able to live as you want, and also it applies to everybody around you as well. So it's that's the third point that I choose.
Thank you, and thank you also for opening up about your background and why you chose these symbols and what success means to you. Yeah, I actually would like to hear like everyone, but it's 7 o'clock, unfortunately. Yeah, what I already said, normally, yeah, you have a conversation for an hour or more about these kinds of exercises in order to get to know each other and also, yeah, maybe reflect on what Natasha and Sarah just said and also have your own view and reflection. So I hope maybe you it gets you thinking as well, and maybe have a really a bit of a reflection at your own home about what you just saw and the symbols you chose in relation also to the others. Well, thank you for participating in this really small part of the of the workshop, and we are always open to feedback. What I said is just a learning process, and I also really appreciated your questions about impact amongst others, and about, for example, what if people really have a different opinion. These are questions that we all also take seriously in the